Hello. Okay, so today I am making some wiring looms like this for Private Bash. So he's going to be a four-wheel drive bot, and I need to create some connectors that would basically let me connect two motors on each side to the Malinky, the ESC that we're going to be using for it. So I thought I'd show how I make these looms. In the bots that I make, typically I use connectors for everything so that it's easy to swap stuff in and out should something get broken. Downside to that is it adds a bit of bulk and a little bit of weight to the bots, but given Infosec Battlebots, we have extra weight anyway compared to the standard UK ant weight. It's not really a big issue. The bulk is typically the biggest thing I have to contend with. So I'm going to be making these, so I thought I would show how I do that. So for a start, I'm using these JST connectors. Let me just get one. These ones here. I quite like them because they are relatively small for the, to cut down on the weight and the bulk and all that stuff, but they're not too small that they're really fiddly to work with. So I think they're quite a nice balance because you can get a lot smaller connectors, but I like these ones. The downside is that these are typically used for power connections. So if you get, say, a power connector from Bristol Battlebots or somewhere else, they typically use them for the battery packs or for the battery connectors. And so you end up with connectors that look like your power but might actually be the ones for the motors. A couple of ways you can get around that. You could use different orientations of connectors for each thing. So if you used, say, like this one, this is a male connector on the power. So the Malinky will have a female connector on it. So what you could do is then use male connectors on the Malinkys and then females on the motors, so that you can't accidentally plug the power into the motor or vice versa. So that's one way you can get around it, but it can get confusing. So we're going to do a GST. These use these are the little square connectors. We're just going to crimp these on to these. But first and foremost, what we need to do is actually strip the wire down. So I'm just going to get two of these off, just so that we've got them. And then we're going to strip a little bit off each end of these wires, just using, I'm using these cheap wire cutter stripper things, cheap and nasty. You can get away with a pair of snips or whatever you want, really. You just need to take a little bit off, not much. So about that, hopefully you can see that focus. So not much. There we go. And that is our wires. Now we're ready to go. So what you want to do is you want to get two of the same color. You want to twist the two ends together as best you can. There we go. Now we're going to get a crimper. So this is for the connectors themselves. If you buy a JST connectors, you can get them with these. They're very cheap. You can also get better ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the connector. Hopefully focus. I'm going to take the connector and put it in. So you can see there's little fins on these. Typically the way you would do these is that you would have a bit of the shielding in like that, so that these crimp and close around the actual outer cover of the wire. We don't want to do that in this case, or well, we would if we could, but because we are twisting two wires together, they're a bit too thick for both of them to fit in here, and you'll have a very hard time getting them into this connector in the first place. So what we do is we actually just put the wire up into there as much as we can and then crimp it closed. You can put a little bit of solder on there if you want to try and give it a bit of a better connection, but it doesn't typically matter. So I'm just going to get that in there just so that it's close. This one ratchets, so once it's in there, it's in there. I have dropped a wire and it's came apart, so let me get that. Going to twist this back together again because it came apart on me, but that's not a big deal. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to feed this into there as far as we can get it. And then crimp. That will crush those two together. There we go, and that's one side of the loom done. Now we're just going to do the exact same thing with the negative leads. So you don't need a crimper to do this. You can just use a pair of pliers if you like. But as I say, if you buy a kit of the connectors, typically they'll come with a crimper anyway. They're fairly inexpensive. Oh, come on. And this is the reason why they're inexpensive, because they are not good. And that's it. We now have 2 wires. And then putting them into here, see the sort of rough standard that you can get is, hopefully you can see underneath all the tape, is red into the right hand side as you're looking at it. So if we look at this one, see that red should be going into this side. So we're going to keep that standard. Doesn't really matter too much if you're making these all yourself, but you just need to make sure that you put them the same way around, otherwise you'll end up putting connectors in the wrong way. So we put that in, and you'll hear a little click. And then same again with this one. Whenever you're putting these in, there's a little tab there that you can see. That's what goes. That's what's face up. That's that metal that you can see there. There we go. And then this is why typically you would use the shielding in and crimp around the shielding. Is as you can see, there is little strands of wire here that could connect or could touch and cause a bit of a short, which we don't really want. So what we're going to do is we are going to do put a little bit of heat shrink around these, just to help stop any shorts from happening. So a little bit of heat shrink. I'm just going to cut this in half because it'll do both of them. And typically what I do is I pair them off so that we have red to red and black to black, just to keep them a little bit organized so that they sit quite nicely, which is what I've done with this one. As you can see, you've got the heat shrink around them. Now you might be saying, but Grant, that doesn't help with a short because you're connecting 2 wires together. You would be right. So typically what I do is whenever I'm pairing them off, as I pair off, there's usually one that's worse than the other. And so I sort of like pair them off separately so that the bad red wire is with the good black wire and the bad black wire is with the good red wire. Roughly, doesn't matter too much. I have never had a short, so far it's been working for me. Okay, then we've got them all lined up, and then we just use leather to shrink the tubing. There we go. So not my best work. You can still see some of the connectors going out there, but I'm fairly confident that we shouldn't get any shorts there. But we will see. And that's it. We've now got 2 looms, one for each motor. And so we plug that into the Malinky, that into one motor, that into one motor on the other, on one side, and then this will go into the other side, and that will give us left and right movement on a 4-wheel drive bot. If there's any other stuff that you want to see, how we build, how we put it together badly, let us know, and we'll do some videos on that as well. See you.